Today, I want to go over my favorite books of all time. Now, this list changes, but at this moment in my life, I think these are my favorite books that I have ever read. I have other lists like my favorite writers, probably like the books that changed me the most, my favorite poets of all time, my favorite children's book authors, and a few other random lists, but I figured we'd start big today with this list. This is the top 10 books of all time, according to me. So first, at number 10, The Count of Monte Cristo. Now, this was one of those books I read almost 15 years ago and was immediately blown away by how good it was. I kind of think the book feels a little meandering, and the plot doesn't really move as fast as a lot of modern books that are written today, like that are just so plot-centric and just move so quickly. But I think it's one of the best stories that I've ever read in my entire life. Now, it was one of two books that I read in high school that really got me into reading. And I remember my dad was reading it when I was around high school age, and he recommended it, so it has a bit of sentimental value too. But I remember seeing the movie with Jim Caviezel and Guy Pearce first. I thought it was such a great movie that I wanted to dive into the book. But boy, if there is a disparity between book and movie, that is the one. But just an incredible read. Such a good book. Number 9. Maybe a little bit of a different one, but The Poetry of Mary Oliver. Yes, I'm basic. Everyone loves Mary Oliver, but she has poems on dogs. So any poet who can write on dogs as well as she can immediately becomes my favorite author. She is, I think in my opinion, the best and the greatest poet of the 20th century. She wrote my favorite poem of all time, which is this. If you are holding this book, you may not agree, you may not care, but if you are holding this book, you should know that of all the sights I love in this world, and there are plenty, very near the top of this list is this one, Dogs Without Leashes. I mean, come on. She writes with a lot of cheek. She is such a good writer. Every single one of her poems shines off the page, and it's really deep poetry, but it's really accessible at the same time, which I think is a hard balance to find as a poet. Still really beautiful, still really deep, still very accessible. Number 9 is Housekeeping by Marilynne Robinson. Now, this book is easily the most boring book on this list, but the writing is just so good that I cannot help but put this on the list. I think Marilynne Robinson would honestly be higher on my list of favorite authors, but this book, while not particularly riveting in the plot, I think is riveting in the writing itself. There's a lot of disagreement with like what her best and greatest novel is, but I think this is my favorite of her novels because it just kind of feels like she writes with a quality that is a bit more wild and carefree than her other books. Her other books seem a bit more buttoned up and clean, but this one kind of still feels a little rough around the edges, and I think I love it the most for that particular reason. Now, number 7 is, I think, the greatest memoir I've ever read in my entire life, The Glass Castle. Unbelievable book. I remember reading Educated by Tara Westover because that was like the book a few years back, and I thought Educated was a not as well written Glass Castle. The whole premise of Glass Castle is just astounding. I read it on vacation in like 2 days, and my sister-in-law picked up the book when I finished and did the same exact thing. I remember we reminisced about all the stories and about all the wild things that happen in that book, but the book is absolutely insane. I went through a period where I just read memoirs over a few years, and I guess I was just like in a deep memoir phase, and this one easily tops the list of all the ones that I've read. Now, there are other fantastic ones and incredible writers like Joan Didion and Mary Karr, but I think this one, The Glass Castle, just kind of reigns supreme in my head. The storytelling and writing is just, it's just incredible. Number 6 is a weird one. No one's list, but it's on mine. It's the greatest children's book of all time, The Fate of Fausto. This was a book that was kind of providentially delivered to me a few years back. As I was looking for Christmas gifts for all my nieces and nephews, I went to Barnes & Noble and got like 40 books off the shelf and sat down and started reading them. I really wanted to get like a book that matched each of their characters and spoke to their personalities and just who they were as people. So it took me like a few hours to kind of find a book that really matched both of them. But this book, The Fate of Fausto, was the last in the pile, and I picked this up because I really like the artwork. And I remember as I kept reading this, every single page, my jaw just got a little bit more and more unhinged. I was shocked by the ending of this book. It's one of the craziest endings of any book that I've ever read in my entire life, put in a children's story. It is wild. It's just about a man who kind of walks around thinking he owns everything and the issue that he runs into when he does that. The artwork is honestly top notch. It's linotype. Oliver Jeffers isn't just my favorite children's book author, but I think he's actually my favorite artist at the moment. He does a lot of fine art, and his fine art is absolutely stunning. So go grab a copy of The Fate of Fausto, because I think that will blow your mind. Number 5, it's everyone's favorite and a simultaneously least favorite book they read in high school, To Kill a Mockingbird. This was actually the first book that I read, and I sat back after I finished reading this and said, wow, reading is incredible. I was a freshman in high school, and I've read a bunch of other books up to that point, but really never got that into them. I remember actually reading A Hobbit a few years earlier in class, and it was like fun. I remember going through the riddles, and that was really fun. But it wasn't a book that kind of changed me and got me into reading like To Kill a Mockingbird did. Everything about this book, from the writing to the story to the themes in this novel, just kind of hit me where it hurt. And I can still remember every single night that I got to read this book, I got giddy just to get back into the story. This book really, really launched my love of reading as well. And it's the whole reason why I got into Harry Potter and got into all these other memoirs that I read and all these other incredible novels. This was like the starting point. And I remember as soon as I finished this, I was in such a reading mood that I consumed all 5 of the Harry Potter books in like a few months because it was so good. But I really love To Kill a Mockingbird with my whole heart. It is the book that has launched me into a love of reading. It might be one of my top ones on the sentimental reading list, but it's just such a fantastic book. Number 4, you can't read this, but this is Middlesex by Geoffrey and DeGenides. Now, this book came to me when I was in a dry spell of reading, and I went to the bookstore and picked up 30 books, and I did this, which I think some of you have probably done this, but I read the first sentence. If I liked the first sentence and it captured my attention, I kept reading. If I didn't like it, I put it down. The first sentence of Middlesex was one that I had to read because it was so good. I've memorized this first sentence. It's incredible. But it says, I was born twice. First, as a baby girl on a remarkably smogless Detroit day of January 1960. And then again as a teenage boy in an emergency room near Petoskey, Michigan in August of 1974. Like, are you kidding me? It's an incredible start. How can you not read the next sentence that comes after that and the next sentence that comes after that? Such a good book. It's kind of like a Forrest Gump, but a Forrest Gump was Greek and moved to Detroit. And it just has like a lot of other issues other than Forrest Gump, but it is fantastic. Number 3, The Lord of the Rings. Now, this channel knows all about my love of Lord of the Rings. And here's the crazy thing about this, is that this book takes the 3rd spot in this list, and I am only halfway done with my first read. That's right. I'm not even finished with this book, and it's still my 3rd favorite of all time. Now, this might get bumped up after I finish, but boy, is this book incredible. Not only is it one of maybe the most fun books I've ever read in my life plot-wise, but just the wisdom that Tolkien embeds into the story is just top-notch. The writing itself is so gorgeous. I think there are few writers alive or dead who write so well as Tolkien. And if you want all my thoughts on the perfect work of literature, I have something like 20 to 30 hours of videos on the channel that are just all about discussing Lord of the Rings and Fellowship of the Ring, chapter by chapter, theme by theme. So I think this book is miraculous in its storytelling, and it is one of the best books that I've ever read in my entire life. Number 2 is the Poisonwood Bible. I was thinking kind of the same thing about talking with the book Middlesex, but the Poisonwood Bible is just the better version of Middlesex. This book is incredible. It is like a mix of Middlesex, but To Kill a Mockingbird as well, because it's told through the perspective of these 4 girls that are in this family. It's the 4 Price children as they go throughout, and they are going to the Congo because their dad wants to be a missionary. And it's their whole life and what their family becomes. And the father is kind of crazy, and the whole story kind of goes all over the place between the Belgian Congo and the French Congo and the Independent Republic of Congo. And this book kind of made me do a deep dive on history. And I still remember the entire time I was reading, I just kept doing deep dives on like King Leopold and how terrible he was and all the things that happened in the Belgian Congo. And it's one of the best books that I've ever encountered in my entire life. And when I was reading this for the first time, I actually stopped when I had 50 pages left because I did not want to finish this book. And I just wanted to stay with the characters. It was that good. The book is just Like legitimately, I cannot sing that book's praises enough. It is probably one of the best books that I've ever read in my entire life, and I will not get off that. And when I was reading this, I took a break for a week because I really just did not want to finish this book because it just, honestly, it just blew my mind. But the number one book on this list is the saddest one maybe of all time, The Diary of Anne Frank. As I think texts are concerned, this to me feels like a book written by divine inspiration. How, out of everyone who was killed or who wrote during the time, did this brilliant little girl just start picking up a pen and keeping a journal? I don't really typically cry when I read, but this book never fails to elicit some tears in me. Every single time I pick it up, it's just such a tragic story, and she writes so well, and she writes with such wisdom. Cannot speak highly enough of this book. I love it with everything in me. And I still don't know if this will ever be supplanted by anything else that I ever read. I think it is honestly the perfect book written by a girl who likely would still have been alive today had none of this stuff happened to her. It is absolutely tragic. I love this book with everything in me. So there you have it. That is my top 10 at the moment. Honestly, ask me tomorrow, and this list might completely and totally change. I think this list is like a mix of things. I had initially about 50 books that I had read that I had a really hard time whittling down to 10. So I'll maybe come out with another list some other time. But there you have it. Make sure you subscribe if you like this video, because this is just kind of a book channel about all things book nerds and Tolkien nerds and all the other random stuff that I'm reading. So you can also kind of become a member or donate if you want. And I'll see you in the next one.